Okay, so in this video, we're going to basically be discussing exponents and everything that you need to know for exponents. But as I said before, and this is basically a nice, neat diagram that visually explains what I was saying in the previous video, is that I cannot teach all of these sections entirely until we complete other sections. So initially, when we did the number systems, we covered basically 100% of the work. So everything that you need to know is in the number systems, right? Because that's like a foundational topic that we can discuss fully, because it's a topic that makes up all other topics. As I said, it's the words in math, so we can discuss that fully. But topics like prime and composite, fractions, algebraic expressions, and equations, I basically gave you only 50% of the knowledge. I can only give you the other 50%. So this is the first cycle. This is us walking down this path the first time around. I can only give you 50% of the knowledge in most of the sections. After we've discussed factorization, right? So after we discuss factorization, then I can go from here, and now I can go back to the beginning. And I can start completing all of the topics fully. Right, so we can start completing all of these topics, and that's basically where you get your 100%. Right, so this diagram is basically self-explanatory. You can see exactly what I'm trying to say. So today we are at this point here where we're discussing exponents, and this is how big factorization is. Imagine factorization is so big that we have to go to factorization. After we do factorization, we have to go back to the beginning and explain all of these topics again and see how factorization fits. Right, so this is basically why factorization is so important. And I think that is exactly why I decided to teach it in such a way that you'll be able to solve almost any factorization question that you are given. In fact, all of it, right? But that's provided that you understand how it fits in fractions, how it fits in exponents and algebraic expressions. But you see, initially when I did factorization, it was just basically just doing volume. So I just did as many questions as I could, and I tried to understand the work. So when I had a question, I was just able to apply myself, and I had somewhat of a structure when I did it back then. But now I have a very, very, very rigid formula that you can use to solve any factorization question. Right? You see, this is the reason why maths is so hard. It's because by the time you get to grade 10, let's say you're in grade 9 this year, by the time you get to grade 10, you forget all of this year. You forget all of the foundational explanations because it wasn't done correctly. And by the time we go back to the beginning, and we have to go through the second cycle to go through all of these topics again, you don't understand what you're doing because you lost an idea of exactly what is expected from you. Okay, so let's continue with the exponents module. Okay, so for the exponents module, this is exactly how we are going to go about discussing exponents. Firstly, we are going to deal with what we call integer exponents, right? So again, you can see the word integer coming from the number systems. It could be either one of these numbers, negative infinity, coming all the way up to -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and all the way up to positive infinity, right? So that's basically what the exponent will look like. Then we'll talk about exponential notation. So basically give you the basic structure of the notation and some of the words that we use, which we've already done in algebraic expressions, where we spoke about the base and the exponent. But I'll just give you basically talk about it in terms of exponents, nothing different. Then we'll talk about the placement of the negative, where how we can yield two different answers when the negative is placed differently. Okay, and then I want to talk about this very, very in detail. Right? What does it mean to square root a number, and what does it mean to cube root a number? Right, and then I will also give you a lot of information and create a distinction between the positive square root and the negative square root. Very important. The square roots and the cube roots are topics that are misunderstood a lot. So I will give you a lot of information on that. Then we will talk about comparing exponents or bring in the exponential rules. And yes, and then we'll talk about decimals. Right, so how do you square root and cube root, or find the squares and cubes when you're given decimals? We'll talk about that. Then I'll link it back all the way up to prime and composite numbers. We'll bring in orders of operation from the previous section. Then we'll talk about exponential equations. And then lastly, after I've discussed the factorization module, we'll come back to this topic and we will discuss exponents using the rules from factorization. So what are some of the questions that can present itself after you have knowledge on factorization? So that'll be the next section that we will discuss, factorization. Okay, but for now, let's deal with integer exponents.